Semantics, 7:1625. Mathematics is, by definition, semantic in nature, but don't let that fool you into thinking that it's arbitrary and not intrinsic to the universe. I believe that it was in this sense that Plato believed that math exists. The arbitrary component of math is the semantics, the definitions, the set of symbols utilized to represent these self-evident discoveries about the undeniable nature of information theory. Some will argue that the universe could have been different, or that it could have had different fundamental constants. I believe, or rather understand, that the only sense in which they could be different is how we would represent them. For example, we utilize a 10-digit system for enumeration, and this doesn't have to be the case. Binary uses only 2, and hexadecimal has 16. One result of this is which constant rational numbers can be expressed with finite digits. For example, since 10 is not evenly divisible by 3, the number 1/3 cannot be expressed with finite digits. Instead, it is 0.3 repeating, such that the 3's must go on forever, bounded by infinity. But in base 12, 1/3 is simply 0.4. That's it. The reason this is the case is simply that 10 has prime factors of 2 and 5, and not prime factors of 3, 7, 11, etc. Really, only prime numbers need to be accounted for, since all other natural numbers are necessarily expressible in terms of their products. For this reason, assuming that there are irrational numbers going to infinity, that is to say that the set of irrational numbers is infinite, you would need to multiply all of them together to produce a numeration structure or language that could express all rational numbers with finite digits. Still, for any given rational number, there exists a base for a language that allows you to express it with finite digits. I also believe or understand not only that irrational numbers must be bounded only by infinity, but that this can never be proven necessarily. Just like it is obvious that the universe exists and I'm not generating it all from my mind, it fundamentally must remain unprovable. Furthermore, I believe that this conjecture is therefore isomorphic to all other undeterminable yet necessarily true aspects of reality. I see that pi and e must be the values that they are since the universe exists, and that their exact value can never be converged upon. The same is true for the finite structure constant, and even the nature of a grand unified theory. It must hold that one grand unified theory is accurate, but since it exists beyond the scope of the universe yet contributes to the universe's behavior, we can never really know more than the probabilities given to us by quantum mechanics. It is likely that the grand unified theory is actually pure chaos, and I think that many ancient philosophers have been able to easily deduce just as much, for it is necessary and self-evident. Consider the Greek primordial deities, and how the founding and most intrinsic must be chaos, and that the universe itself is influenced and defined merely by it. The exact nature of the universe is the way that it is simply because it could not be otherwise, simply because of the undeniable and self-evident nature of number theory. The truths converged upon by information theory through the arbitrary language of math are as true as existence is undeniable, and yet can only be deduced by using an arbitrary language. Much like how consciousness is illusory in the sense that it is nothing more than a definition for the configuration of matter and energy in space-time, its nature can be described and is knowable. However, the ability to fully prove that it is illusory requires that you accept or have faith in objective reality, in nature, in the universe as something greater than yourself. But it's not really greater than you because, as I assert, belief in the universe is equivalent to asserting the unprovable falsehood of solipsism. It couldn't be otherwise, and this is obvious to anyone who gives it enough thought. Thus the Greeks did deduce it. So all of these necessarily indeterminate definitions are in fact fundamental to the universe because self-evidently anything exists at all, and are in fact isomorphic to one another, which is to say that they are identical and describe one another. The value of transcendental numbers, the unprovability of the universe's existence beyond solipsism, the value of the finite structure constant, the grand unified theory that defines the universe or the nature of quantum physics, and whether there are infinite irrational numbers are all in fact the same observation. Pretty cool, right? I mean, I have absolute certainty about all of this, so you'd be hard-pressed to convince me that I'm wrong, or even that it is my subjective opinion. It simply is. and I can see that for any given observer blessed with enough memory, powers of logical deduction, and time, this would also be self-evident. When a subjective observer turns their inner eye upon itself and beholds its own non-existence, it is the same as Euler's identity perfectly defining the arbitrary language of mathematics. But the conclusions it gleans about information theory are necessarily undeniable. This I need not assert, for, as I wrote, it is obviously true. There are no other possible universes, and the existence of ours is simply a consequence of chaos and information theory, both of which are implicitly understandable, but contain aspects which can never be fully defined or proven. The nature of chaos is observable through quantum mechanics and provably random through Bell's theorem, and yet we could never use this property to generate anything truly random, even though technically everything is the product of phenomena that are reducible only to pure probability. The final unsolvable mystery is really just another undeniable fact, one which Occam's razor cannot be used to assert the truth of. The truth that nothing should exist at all. It is self-evident that either some consciousness or the universe do in fact exist, so either way, this is our ground zero for understanding the nature of reality. And there you have it. I'll conclude by again asserting that there is no contradiction between the standard model and quantum mechanics that needs resolving via a theory of everything. We already know pretty much everything when it comes down to it. The thought experiment I use is quite easy to understand, at least for me. It's the idea that just because the present cannot be used to determine the future beyond a probability field, it is still predetermined. Perhaps for the same reason that given any finite amount of time, only a finite number of irrational numbers can be calculated. It has no beginning and no end, and yet simply is. We are bound to a fixed point in time, so we can never know the whole universe's history, beginning to end, all at once. But in a sense it already exists, at least independent of the illusion of scrolling through time. Yet another consequence of the illusion of awareness. We experience time one moment at a time because, for an aware subjective observer of objective reality, that is the universe, it could not be otherwise. Case in point.